Alright guys, just want to do a quick video on what I think is the best Ajax build at the moment. Not even just because it's strong, although it is definitely a strong build. It's probably also just the most fun build I've used since playing this game. You've probably seen from the footage, but the idea is that you are still this sort of super tank that just doesn't stop jumping everywhere. And so the idea is you sort of cycle between your second and third ability. And so you're just wiping through wave after wave after the enemy, so literally just jumping through them. And so to show you the mods that I'm using, and I will show you a cheaper version after running through this, where the core of the build sort of remains the same, but of course you will have to make some sacrifices, but it's still such a great build even without sort of heavy investment in catalysts. So the build sort of revolves around Void Charge, and what this does is it changes your second and third ability so that it scales off defense. And so by doing that you can still be this super tank and build tanky and still clear out enemies. And also by using Void Charge, when you use the enhanced skill, your cooldown resets, so it will allow you to jump even more and use your third ability even more. So in terms of the sub module, as always, it doesn't really matter. I've got mid-air maneuvering because I think it's sort of the most valuable one, but you can just use a blue if you're short on gold or Kuiper. You're going to want to have increased defense. This whole build sort of revolves around defense, and defense is such a great stat just in general. HP amplification, again, just general tankiness. This gives you an insane amount of health, and you don't care about shields in this game for the most part, so getting rid of some shields doesn't really matter. MP conversion, this is because you just want as much skill cooldown as possible to keep those two abilities up as much as possible. Agony, just a little bit of MP so you can spam your abilities a bit more and more defense. Number fingers, again, just more cooldown. Defense stance, just an insane amount of defense. Increased HP, again, just some tankiness. Skill expansion, you want this because it just means your 2 and 3 hit more enemies, so it just makes farming easier. And an MP collector, this is what's going to allow you to keep spamming those abilities non-stop. Of course, you are going to get MP just from killing the enemies, but MP collector just keeps you topped up and makes it almost impossible to run out of MP. So you'll probably notice I'm using Ultimate Ajax here. And so Ultimate Ajax starts with 4 built-in catalysts, and you'll probably notice I've also added 3. So to show you the catalysts that I've chose more clearly, here you go. And so in terms of bossing, you'll probably notice the only change I make is I remove the range and MP collector because you don't get as much use out of these, and instead add on whatever resistance sort of relates to the boss, just to make myself a little bit tankier. So in terms of the cheaper option, you sort of have a few options where you can go, and this is also usable on normal Ajax. You don't need Ultimate Ajax for this. So ignore the module capacity here because I obviously have to show it you with the catalyst pre-installed, but assuming these didn't have catalyst, this whole build here would cost 80 slots in total, and so you could do this just purely by adding a activator to your Ajax. If you're just using normal Ajax, the other option is you could, instead of using an activator, keep with 0 activators, add 2 catalysts, and then all you'll do is you'll reduce your increased HP by 4 levels, and so that'll bring it down to the 60 module capacity, and so that is just another way that you can use normal Ajax with sort of a lesser investment. And so even with this build, even with the reduced build, you're only making small sacrifices, like you're going to have a little bit less range and you're not going to use MP collector. As long as you've got the cooldown mods that I've shown you, and then you've got increased defense, both defense stance and increased defense here, the build's going to work perfectly. And of course you do need the Transcendent mod to make the most out of this. So in terms of the reactor, you're going to want a non-attribute tech reactor, so it's a materialized mechanics reactor, and you are going to want skill cooldown. So this is a bit of a pain to farm, to be honest, this reactor, and so I haven't got the perfect stats, but as far as stats go, skill cooldown and skill cost are going to be the best. So you're always going to want to have skill cooldown, but if you do roll skill cooldown with something else, something like non-attribute, tech, damage to Colossus, those sort of stats will work fine as well. In terms of the primary, I've got the tactical rifle weapon class, and if I was to get the gold version, I would have it with the secret garden weapon that you can see I'm using here, and I'll explain the reason. You don't need the secret garden weapon if you don't want to sort of invest into it, but it does synergize quite well with this build. So if you're someone who's already built up the Thunder Cage or Tiamat, that's going to work just fine with this build. It's going to allow you to do everything you want still regardless, because when it comes to farming especially, this build mostly relies on abilities rather than the weapon. And so the reason why I've gone with Secret Garden is it's got good base stats just in general, it's got quite a high firearm critical hit rate and critical hit damage. But then if you also look at the unique ability, when using a Dimension skill, Dimension is Ajax's third ability, recovers custom resource for a set chance. So custom resource is that sort of enhanced meter so that you can use his specialised abilities. And then when using a tech skill, which is his second ability, grants unique ability pest control. And what that's going to do is give you flat firearm attack and skill power, and also stacks that increase your firearm attack and skill power. And so it's just giving Ajax more damage the more you use your abilities. And of course the idea of this build is you're spamming your abilities constantly, and so this gun works perfectly with that. Again, if you've already built up something like the Tamer or the Thunder Cage, don't feel like you need to build up this. This is just sort of a nice to have, and because I was getting a little bit bored of the Tamer and Thunder Cage, because it feels like that's all I've used for the whole time I've been playing this game, pretty much I decided to bring up another weapon. Now in terms of external components, you're pretty much just going to want to prioritise defence as much as possible. Now normally with builds I'd recommend a mixture of HP and defence, but with the mods you're already going to have more than enough HP, and so I've gone with defence primaries on every single external component here, and then where you can get defense secondary, for example memory, I've done that. I've also tried to keep with my resistances, so I've got toxic resist here, electric resist here, chill resist here, and fire resist here. There is a defense bonus external component set in the game, but it doesn't actually benefit you enough. It gave me around 1,000 more defense, but I lost some of my resistances from using it, and so I just stuck with this. You don't need these to be perfect, just try and get defense primaries, and then of course resistance secondaries where possible. Now this build in terms of bossing intercept battles, it's still really good because you just don't ever die, and so you can continue to put out DPS, but of course its strength is in farming and just how fun it is really. So yeah, I hope that helps. If you do have any questions about how you can sort of change the build based on how many activators or catalysts you got, feel free to ask. Thanks.